Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and the Washington Commanders rookies have already reported to training camp. We're super excited. We're almost in the full swing of things, man. But we do have some big news. Second round rookie defensive tackle Johnny Newton was placed on the NFI list. We're going to talk about all of that. We also have a big time stadium update as well, and a lot more things to talk about. This is like a tiny bit of like a training camp preview with a lot of other important information in it included as well. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, we are almost in the full swing of things. We are almost right back to training camp. We are so close. I can't wait. I'm gonna have you updated on everything Commanders when it comes to especially the training camp practices. Any clips or any videos we get from the practices, I'll give those to y'all. And you know I'm gonna break down every little thing that goes down in practice. And you know I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm gonna say who had a bad day, who had a good day. Some people may have good days one day and then a bad day the next and then a good day the next. So we're just gonna keep it 100 the whole way through. We're not going to jump to any major conclusions. I'm just going to give you the information that is readily available and break everything down. Without further ado, man, let's go and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, the Washington Commanders rookies reported July 18th, 2 days ago on Thursday, but the veterans do not report until July 23rd, and I believe they officially start to practice on the 24th. So that's when we'll probably start to get some serious updates, because I don't think we're going to get really too many other updates until we actually start practicing, because we don't have any like real serious injuries going on outside of Johnny Newton right now. As far as the veterans go, I think we're pretty much good. I think FL Bada's the only guy that's like returning from a serious injury, and I'm not sure if he's ready to go yet, but this isn't even a projected starter. So we're probably not going to get any serious notable Commanders news until we get to the 24th when they actually start practicing. The only question there is, are they actually going to give us access as fans and reporters to those practices yet? Or will these be closed off from the public and we won't really hear much from it? I hope we'll get as much access as possible, but at the same time, if they want to shut it down and not allow other teams and fans and reporters to see anything, I'm not mad at it, because the goal at the end of the day is to win. To have access while they're preparing to win is only the cherry on top. It's not the main course at all. So I would love access, but if we don't get it, it is what it is. I just want to go out there and win. That's the priority. But again, going back to Johnny Newton, with the only real serious injury information that we have as far as our team goes, and we're lucky. You're already seeing teams out there losing people for the rest of the season and things like that. We are lucky for Johnny Newton to be our biggest injury story. But it is still at the same time an injury story. And we already know that he's had the injuries to both of his feet. He recovered from one. Now he's dealing with another one. And we officially got a big time update as of yesterday, July 19th on Friday. It was updated that Washington has placed Johnny Newton on the non-football injury list. He was placed on the NFI list rather than the PUP list because his foot injury was sustained in college instead of the NFL. And per league rules, when you're on the NFI list, especially at this point, you can come off of that list at any time during the training camp and preseason. There's no strict rules as to like you got to give teams a heads up, all of this kinds of stuff. They got to wait a certain amount of weeks. No, whenever he's ready, he'll be ready to go. Hopefully as soon as possible. And then it was also reported on top of that there is no timetable for his return yet. They're just leaving it up in the air, and I'm assuming that they at least have somewhat of an idea how close he is, but they just, I mean, if they don't have to tell us, why would they? I feel like more than anything else. But even just say worst case scenario, we have no idea when Johnny Newton is coming back. I mean, we'll see. It definitely seems like he won't be ready for the start of training camp in just a few days. Hopefully he'll be ready by week 1 of the regular season. I would love it if we got to see him in some preseason games. First of all, just as a selfish fan, I would just love to see our second round pick, our first of 3 second round picks, go out there and play in the preseason. But on top of that, I just feel like the more snaps you get, especially as a rookie, will help him develop a little bit quicker and be ready for the regular season. But we'll see though. I mean, of course, we prefer the healthier, the sooner, the better. But We'll see how this goes. This kid will make a big time difference. He will be a big time difference maker for this team. I'm not unsure about that at all. I'm not questioning that at all. It's just a matter of when, not if, in my opinion. When will he be ready and healthy enough to be able to be that difference maker? I'm telling you, man. And just remember, Johnny Newton had 52 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 7.5 sacks, and a forced fumble, and 4 block kicks on his way to making the All-American team at Illinois. And this was just last season alone. Just last season by itself. This guy is different, bro. And shouts out to Dean Jones again from Rico's Rag. Y'all hear me refer to him when I do a lot of videos because he has some great articles over there. And he talked about how will the Commanders unleash rookie Johnny Newton in 2024. And we're not going to do like a super deep dive into that. I just wanted to take this one part from that article, but you can definitely do like go check out that article, please. I strongly encourage it, but I don't want to just completely read all of this man's article in this YouTube video. But he brought up the point that the Commanders plan to get Johnny Newton on the field often in 2024. And why wouldn't you? First of all, the talent, but also even just the fact that you spent a very early second round pick on him. He's expected to play a lot. He was a first round pick projection coming out before he was drafted, but I guess the injuries are why this guy ended up going in the early second. But the article goes on to say excitement remains high despite Newton's turbulent start. It's hard to gauge what his role will be in 2024, but respected beat writer John Comm of ESPN believes the Commanders will find a way to get him on the field frequently with Dan Quinn's creative alignments. John Comm said, quote, Johnny Newton missed spring workouts after undergoing surgery to repair a Jones fracture in his left foot. His status for training camp remains uncertain, though that will be cleared up when he reports and undergoes a physical. Once healthy, he's expected to be a key backup behind Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. Newton is somewhat undersized inside at 6'2", 304 pounds, but offers pass rush skills. He led Illinois with 7.5 sacks en route to being named the Big Ten's Defensive Player of the Year. Out of the whole Big Ten. During the draft, Adam Peters asked Dan Quinn if he could find a way to get all 3 of these tackles on the field. Quinn quickly said yes, unquote. Again, that's coming from John Comm through the Dean Jones article on Rico's Rag. And my point is that I know we have these injury concerns. I know we have these. Well, we already have Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne. How often is he going to see the field? Trust me, this guy will make a big impact for this defense and this team. You just got to take my word for it, man. Hear me now, believe me later, but I'm a big Johnny Newton fan with good reason. I've watched the tape. Just buckle up. When he's healthy, I'm telling y'all, big impact on the team. And now also moving on, heading into training camp, the rookies, of course, have some goals that they want to reach. I mean, that's just obvious. They're rookies. They have a lot of things on their plate going into their first seasons. But there are also some veterans with some very specific goals as well. It's not just the rookies, because Terry McLaurin just had an interview and Scott Abraham News basically asked him like what he's focused on, improving on in this offseason. And we talked about this like a month or two ago. I already talked. He brought this up, I believe, in one of the practices that he wanted to work on his yards after the catch. He basically doubled down on it in an interview with Scott Abraham, and there's a whole clip of it if you wanted to see it, but I'm not going to necessarily include that here because it's a decent, relatively extensive interview, and I know y'all probably don't want to sit for that. So if you want to go check that out, go to Scott Abraham's channel at Scott7News on Twitter. But Terry said, quote, it's a part of my game that I can really improve. It's the practice habits with it. It's the way I'm trying to finish when I get the ball, unquote. And I feel like Terry McLaurin is already an underrated receiver as far as yards after the catch. I feel like he's an underrated receiver just period all across the board, but I feel like yards after the catch, he definitely doesn't get the recognition he deserves, even amongst our fan base. And I love the fact that he's even trying to improve that, even beyond what he already is. And if you can get Terry McLaurin to become one of the best yards after catch receivers, it's wraps for a lot of those DBs out there. They already can't cover him, and it's already pretty difficult to tackle him with him being stronger than a guy his size typically is. And then remember, he runs in the 4.3s, but if he's trying to improve that as well, I remember like a month or two ago when we talked about this for the first time, he said he was specifically even trying to just improve his stiff arm. But again, the fact that he's doubling down on that shows that he's very serious about when we're going into training camp. Watch Terry McLaurin working on his yards after catch ability. That's one of the main things he's focused on, if not the main thing. Now, of course, he has to work on his chemistry with Jaden Daniels. He's got to learn the new Cliff Kingsbury offense and things like that. But individually, that seems to be his primary goal right now. And then sticking with Terry McLaurin just real quick, Scott Abraham continuing with the interview, He tweeted, just days away from the start of Commanders training camp, Terry McLaurin is ready to get things started. And Terry McLaurin said, quote, this offseason, all the guys were texting each other, making sure everybody is on the same page. We have a lot of things to be excited about, unquote. So there just seems to be a completely different level of camaraderie here. Guys are going to hold each other accountable. While everybody was on vacation, you had Jaden Daniels all over Cali working out with whoever and whenever, basically. And you had players, I mean, you even had one point Frankie Louvu was in Greece, and then he came back to the DMV and started going crazy with his workouts. I mean, this was a summer break. This is basically like the equivalent of a summer break for NFL players, NFL coaches, just the NFL in general. And so everybody's pretty much everywhere. A lot of people go back home where they're actually from and things like that. But I love the fact that they maintain communication and camaraderie even during this summer break of everybody being everywhere, even in different countries. So thank you for that insight, Terry McLaurin, because you didn't have to go that far to say that. And as a fan, I love hearing that we're doing that. That doesn't automatically translate into wins, but it's definitely an important building block for us to start getting more wins on that field. And now next up, some big stadium news that a lot of people may not like. Mark Ein was talking about the Commander Stadium search, and he basically said that moving into a new stadium could potentially take 7 to 9 years, with 2030 likely being on the very early end of it. And Ein also reemphasized that rebranding is not the top priority currently, and adds that rebranding is, quote, a really big lift, way bigger than people understand, unquote. So there's multiple things to take from that. Multiple. First of all, again, we're lucky basically if we have a new stadium by 2030. Like, that's how tough this process is. It's a really interesting situation, because with us it's also politics included, because we don't even exactly know which state we'll be in exactly yet. It seems like Maryland is the most likely candidate, but like I gave it an example in a previous video. It may have been my most recent video, or maybe a one before, but like pretty much most of the rest of the NFL, if they're working on a new stadium, it's obvious where it's going to be, at least what city and what state is going to be. Like, for example, the Atlanta Falcons, that I hate very much, but this is where I live, this is where I'm from, this is where I live, and things like that, so I relate to it the best. But like, when they were working on the new stadium, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, there wasn't a lot of politics really involved. I mean, there's usually going to be politics involved with anything that takes up as much money as it does to make a new stadium, but it's not multi-layered like ours is. Theirs is just, okay, we want it here specifically, we want to put this much money into it, this is the timeline, things like that. No, most other NFL teams aren't worried about, well, we have this state right next to us trying to get it. We have this state. We have Washington D.C., which is technically not a state, but like it's its own thing. It's just all kinds of chaos that we're having to deal with that other people aren't having to deal with. So there basically should be no surprise that it's going to take till 2030. Even though at the same time, though, I completely agree with my boy Mike Hall over there at the Burgundy Zone when he tweeted, somehow while every other team in the NFL is getting approved for NFL stadiums, it will take them 6 to 8 years till they can open a new one for us. And I mean, I kind of see it. It is crazy that it's taking this long, whereas other teams kind of get it done in a quicker time, in a much smaller amount of time, relatively. It still takes years, but compared to what we're doing, other teams are able to get it done quicker. But I just feel like a lot of it is the political side of it, to where we don't even know. Because if the main goal is to get it back to DC, and we've definitely surpassed some political and zoning hurdles so far, but it's still not a full go yet. So the place that we want to, that most fans want it to be, and it seems like Josh Harris and those guys potentially at the RFK site, and they've already approved demolition and things like that, but there's still so many hurdles to get there, whereas the Atlanta Falcons were just like, we want to move here, okay, go ahead, move there, and we're done, that's it, just pay for it basically. So that's why ours is really taking a long time. But also I want to talk about the fact that he did say that rebranding is not a top priority, and like I explained in a previous video, I mean, now would be a great time if you did plan on doing it, because we don't even have a stadium sponsor yet. Everything's wide open. You can do a clean sweep with the rebranding. You can already bring in a new stadium sponsor, because we're no longer FedEx Field anymore right now. They just gave it like a Commanders Field title right now because we don't have a sponsor. They're still currently looking for one. That's one of the main things that Jason Wright is still working on for the team right now, finding a current sponsor for the stadium in Landover, Maryland that we're still playing at, and then also helping and aiding with the next stadium search. But Right now, that rebranding just isn't a priority. I said that in my video that, like, even though it's wide open, I mean, you have so many empty slots for so many things that if there were a time to rebrand, I understand why they could see this as a great opportunity. But at the same time, I already projected that it would not be a priority. They're not trying to go through all of that stress and struggle right now. And Mark-On basically backed that up by saying it is a really big lift and it's way bigger than people understand. Rebranding, changing the name, logo, and everything like that is a lot more work than the average fan probably thinks it is. And so the Commanders just don't even want to go through with that right now. Even though I understand the argument that, hey, you just now reached a full year of being an owner, and if you were to rebrand it, it would be smart to just go ahead and knock it out early rather than letting that be something that lingers and then you end up doing it later anyway. But at the same time, they just have so much on their plate, and getting this new stadium going is obviously the main priority. But again, on the other side of that as well, going back to the other side, wouldn't it be cool if you plan on changing the name? If you wanted to just be Commanders forever, it is what it is. But if you did have any plans, any desire to change the name, brand, logo, jerseys, all of that again, why not have that ready before you get to the new stadium so that it could just be one big unveiling? Or you could already have the name changed and all of that before we get the new stadium. Everybody's already acclimated to the name. They already have some sort of pride centered around it and things like that. And then the new stadium already has the name and everything plastered on it, so that when you have the new stadium, you don't have to change all of that for the new stuff, change it from Commanders to whatever the new name will potentially be. So, I mean, it's a lot. It's a very complicated situation. Again, politics is involved, money, all kinds of stuff. So this is why it's taking so long, just to let you know. And you have the stadium, you have the potential rebrand. It's not a priority. A lot going on behind the scenes right now, even outside of just the pure football side of things. This organization, I mean, it stays busy. It's always interesting. There's always something. But like I briefly mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, today marks exactly 1 year since former owner Dan Snyder sold the Commanders to Josh Harris for $6.05 billion. NFL owners unanimously approved the team sales, marking the end of Dan Snyder's reign of 24 way too long, sad, depressing years. Again, pretty much my whole existence of football has been knowing Dan Snyder. I wasn't allowed to see any of the Super Bowls, so Josh Harris buying the team was really weird for me because I don't really know much of having another owner other than Dan Snyder. That's pretty much what it's been. And when I saw that and like it really hit me that this is like the 1 year anniversary of him buying the team, this has been a crazy 365 days, y'all. Like, this has been an insanely long 365 days, man. Just think about how different this roster is, this coaching staff, this front office, all of that is compared to this time last year. Like, think about before training camp, Ron Rivera is still your head coach, Jack Del Rio is still your defensive coordinator, and Eric Bieniemy is your offensive coordinator before we even touch training camp. Just think about that. We have just now reached a year since then. It's actually insane. And remember this.
Adam, David Aldridge with The Athletic. Welcome to DC. I wonder what you think of the current roster.
I believe that there's a few cornerstone pieces in this roster. I believe we have a lot of work to do, and that's just evaluating everybody. And that's going to start with the coaches. When the coaches come in, we hire a head coach. We sit down together with the personnel department, and we sit down and evaluate everything and figure out where we need to be. So that's an ongoing process. I've started a little bit, but we have a lot of work to do, David.
That should tell you everything you needed to know before this complete organizational purge happened. Front office, coaching staff, players, everything top to bottom. Adam Peters pretty much gave you the answer without really saying much at all. I mean, that pause, that pause was loud. That silence was very loud there. I mean, he was like, man, I don't even know what to tell you, big dog. I don't know what you want from me, man. These boys, sorry, we got to get them up out of here and bring in some of the guys that I would want here. I'm not mad at it because I love the clean sweep that they did. I'm very excited and optimistic about the future. Again, my whole thing is I'm not worried about the Commanders being great long-term at all. I feel like the way we've set up this organization, we will be Super Bowl contenders. I feel like if anything, it's more of just a win than an if. That's where I'm at. I'm way more win. And my main thing is how good will we be year one? That's my only worry. Like year one, where are we going to be at? I mean, we won 4 games last year, so I'm assuming we will improve at least in the win category to some extent, but how much of an extent? How great will we be? Are we making the playoffs and things like that? Those are my only concerns. But long term, with the foundation that we've set up with this organization, I expect us to be a great team from here on out. We paid our dues for the past 20 years being a laughingstock of the NFL, and I feel like our time has finally come. We have Adam Peters and Brandon Sosna alone should have the rest of the league absolutely frightened about what our future can be. I'm very excited. But again, just to remind you, this year though, let's just slow down on the expectations this year. Maybe even year 2, you could say. I think 5 years down the line, 5-10 years, will be perennial playoff Super Bowl contenders. I'm very confident in that. But year 1, I mean, it's only but so much you can do in one single offseason, which takes me to this post right here. So Jared Dubin of CBS Sports, as you can see on the screen right now, put up every team's biggest question mark, and he does it by division. And for the NFC East, he had the Dallas Cowboys as running back defensive tackle, which is, I mean, instead of just picking one, he picked 2, which is interesting because I thought the point of the exercise would be to narrow it down to 1, because otherwise for each of these teams you could put multiple, but whatever. Cowboys running back defensive tackle, for them to be the only team with 2 weaknesses, I love the way that looks, so I'm not complaining at all, but I did question it. Then the New York Giants offensive line, I understand. The Eagles, linebacker, understandable. And the Washington Commanders, edge rusher, I'm not mad at it. In my personal opinion, left tackle is the biggest concern for this team, but you could argue the edge rusher would at least be one of the top 5s. And if you think about it, with Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler Jr., KJ Henry, and Andre Jones, it's a fair argument to make. KJ Henry and Andre Jones, still question marks. I liked some of the flashes we got from Andre Jones last offseason, not even really during the regular season, and I like some of the flashes we saw from KJ Henry towards the end of last regular season. And Dante Fowler is coming off of his best season of his NFL career statistically just last season under Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr.'s defensive system. So maybe we can expect him to be a really good situational pass rusher in 3rd and long situations. But Cleveland Farrell has never lived up to his draft pick. Dante Fowler hasn't either, but at least he's productive at a getting pressure and sacks situation. Cleveland Farrell's a pretty solid edge setter, run defender, but he's not going to give you much as far as getting after the quarterback. He hasn't lived up to his draft pick at all, even though I remember questioning why he even went that high in the first place when he got drafted. So it's hard to even say he hasn't lived up to his draft pick, because why was he even drafted that high in the first place? And then you have Dorrance Armstrong, where if you take the amount of snaps that he got with the Cowboys as far as being like a rotational player backup, and then you project those numbers based on if he were to get a starting level amount of snaps, he's a double-digit sack guy technically, but he's technically never actually really had double-digit sacks in the season. This is just purely projection saying that, well, if he has 7 sacks as a backup, imagine what he could do as a starter type of situation. And so we got to see. There's a lot of question marks in the edge rusher room. My main concern with the edge rusher room is that there's just no dominant, elite athlete, super freaky, high ceiling, apex athlete type of guy. We don't have that super high ceiling, which is what we had basically in Chase Young and Montez Sweat. And we were waiting for those ceilings to finally be reached. Montez Sweat got way closer than Chase Young ever did, but we were waiting for those ceilings to finally be reached at least somewhat. And I mean, you could argue they never really did, even though Montez Sweat definitely got really close to it, especially once we traded him to the Bears. But I mean, I can see the argument why some people don't want those freaky high ceiling, low floor type of edge rushers, but I would still love to get one of those guys just to be a guy that we groom in this group. Because right now we don't really, the argument here is the why this edge rusher group is one of our biggest weaknesses is because we don't have a difference maker. When you have the Giants and the Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys all having complete difference makers in their edge rusher groups, it is a little amazing that we don't really have one here. So we'll see how this goes. It's like a healthy blend. Like as depth, this is elite edge rusher depth. We just don't have that one apex predator in our edge rusher group, so I can understand. We don't have that one high-end talent necessarily. Again, Dorrance Armstrong, maybe you can project him to be that guy once he gets starting level minutes, but I understand. But I can disagree that that's not our biggest question mark at all. Because first of all, even beyond all of that I just told you, Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. are masterminds at simulating pressure, whether getting it with blitzing linebackers, even blitzing DBs, or confusing offensive line, stunts, all kind. They'll get really creative to get pressure on the quarterback, even outside of just the natural individual talent of the edge rushers at their disposal. So I'm not really worried about the edge rusher group. It would be nice to have a Micah Parsons or a Brian Burns in the edge rusher group, but we don't have one of those, and I can definitely see a scenario with Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn find a way to work around it schematically. Now, also moving on, just a couple of things before we go. Have y'all seen the Las Vegas Raiders 2024 season ticket treasure chest that fans are getting for being season ticket holders? I would love it if the Commanders did something like this, man. These are crazy season ticket boxes, and the presentation is amazing, as you can see on the screen right now. And also, before we get up out of here, this is completely unrelated to everything, but this was just so random. I thought it was so cool. I just wish that I just happened to be there walking around and be like, yo, what's going on over here? What's all that noise? And then I look, and it is the Arena Football League playing its championship game inside of the American Dream shopping mall in New Jersey. They held an entire championship game in a shopping mall. You gotta see it. I can't put the footage in this YouTube video because it's probably gonna get my video taken down, copyright striked, and all of that type of stuff, because it's literally like a CBS Sports live stream and everything. Like, it's a real serious thing. But the fact that, go look it up, they're playing literally in a mall. They even like panned out and showed you how people on different levels of the mall are just literally looking over the railings and looking down at the game. I'm pretty sure they didn't charge anybody to watch the game, because it's in just a mall. You're just walking around shopping. It just happens to be in one of the open area lobbies. There's an arena championship going on, and I just thought that was really cool, man. I would love it if I just happened to be somewhere in Atlanta. Like, well, I don't think any of our malls are built to even hold something like that. I don't think Atlanta really, Arbor Place, Lenox Mall, Greenbrier, Weston, I don't think we really got a mall that can hold a football game like this New Jersey mall did. They just got lucky and just happened to have a mall that had the size and shape of a football field, I guess. Somehow they worked it out. I don't think Atlanta has one of those, but I would love it if I was just somewhere in Atlanta and there would just happen to be a football game going on in the mall, because I would sit and watch the whole thing. I don't care what the level of talent is. I'm chilling and watching. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. I know it was a very random video. We kind of bounced from topic to topic. It was almost like a Rico report. You could call it that. I guess we could put it under that category if you want to. But these were just some of the most interesting things that I was thinking about, and I just felt like I needed to talk about today in a video, especially with the rookies reporting the training camp. Let me know how you feel about all of that. Make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I really appreciate y'all. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about Johnny Newton's injury, because I know some people are already out there saying he's a bust and stuff like that, but trust me, when he's healthy, he's going to be a dog. Also, let me know how you feel about the stadium update, by how, like, at the very earliest, we'll be lucky if we have a new stadium by 2030. And let me know how you feel about everything else discussed in this video. The fact that this is the 1-year anniversary of Josh Harris buying the team from Dan Snyder, and how ridiculous his offseason has been. I may just sit down one day and do a video of how crazy everything has been within just 1 year of Josh Harris's tenure, and just literally go step by step of bringing in Bob Myers and Rick Spielman, firing Ron Rivera and everything. Well, we got to go back further than that. We got to go all the way back to July of last year. Eric Bieniemy, and a lot of people are hyped about him being our offensive coordinator and how everything just went downhill. We started off with, didn't we start 2-0 last season and ended up only winning 4 games? To now where we are with an entirely new, it's ridiculous. I may literally go step for step, almost like in a documentary format. So make sure you stay tuned for something like that if I find the time to be able to do it. But I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like, and I really appreciate y'all. Catch y'all later. I'm out.